Hello, I'm Blaine Curcio, Senior Affiliate Consultant from Euroconsult, and this is the Asia Pacific Satellite Communications Council, or APSCC, webinar series, and a special two-part edition of AWS Aerospace and Satellite Cloud Journey in Asia Pacific, brought to you from our good friends at AWS. Cloud computing is having a transformational impact on nearly every business, government, institution, and indeed the lives of the 7.5 or 8 billion consumers all around the world. And the space and satellite industry is absolutely no exception to this, with cloud computing becoming a bigger and bigger trend in becoming a bigger and bigger trend. And here today, I'm speaking with Laurent Dien, the AWS Aerospace and Satellite Solutions Lead for the Asia Pacific region. And we're going to be discussing how AWS Cloud brings opportunities to strengthen the satellite industry and the innovation system thereof in the Asia Pacific region. So welcome, Laurent. Great to be with you today.
Hi, Blaine. Hi, everyone. Thanks to APSCC to have me here. Such a great discussion and looking forward to share insights with you.
Well, it's been a little while since we've met up in person, but that painting in the background brings me back to the days of you being over here in Hong Kong and us hanging out somewhere near those skyscrapers. So good times and good to catch up. So before we dive into some topics on AWS and on the SATCOM industry, Laurent, can you give us a bit of background of when did you join AWS and whereabouts are you based with them, if not Hong Kong?
Sure. I joined the Aerospace and Satellite Business Unit at AWS in January 2021. I'm now based out of Singapore, serving the Asia Pacific market, refocusing my sales efforts in ASEAN countries, also including South Korea and Hong Kong. As we speak, the team has expanded in Asia Pacific territories. We have a dedicated presence in Japan, Australia to serve the Australasian market, and we keep growing our presence in the region.
Well, that makes sense. I'm sure there's a lot of cloud opportunities in a lot of these countries, and so you've got to be quite localized. And I guess a very good place to expand around the region, from Singapore being this travel hub.
Absolutely.
And we're starting to see, I think, more travel, more trade shows. So what's been going on lately in Singapore from a travel and trade show perspective? How has that been going for you?
Yeah, you said it, Blaine. Singapore is literally a hub in Asia, and it started to open up for travels back in November 2021 with limited destinations. Trade shows with physical attendance were possible again beginning of 2022. The first one in Singapore was the GSTC, the Global Space and Technology Convention. Hundreds of people attended in person, thousands virtually, organized by the SSTL, the Singapore Space and Technology. Senior executives and representatives from US, Europe, surrounding Asian countries, they were flying in. There were quality panels and discussion with Space Agency, ISTA for Thailand, MISA, Malaysia, PhilSA, Philippines, JAXA and LAPAN. So exciting times ahead.
And yeah, that's one conference, GSTC, that I've never had the chance to attend. But I guess nowadays, being a bit more of a space agency conference, that must be really exciting with all the new space agencies. And I guess, on the topic of conferences in the region, coming up is one of the more commercial ones that I always certainly look forward to. So Communicasia. That is, I guess, the next big event in the region. So are you guys planning on attending the, I guess, now called Asia Tech X Singapore and associated conferences? What's your plan for that?
Absolutely, Blaine. Looking forward to see you in Singapore again. And that's indeed the very exciting upcoming event for Singapore, the Asia Tech Singapore, beginning in June. Traditionally, it's the event for the satellite industry gathering in Asia Pacific, including Communicasia, Broadcast Asia. And this year, they introduced Asia Satellite Business Week as well, inspired by the famous Euroconsult Satellite Business Week in Paris. So it has been, it has been virtual for 2 years, and we are all looking forward, I guess, this year to reconnect in person with friends and customers from the satellite and space industry.
Oh yeah, and I remember back in the day, let's call it 2014, when they would have the sponsored networking events at the raffles where it was just unlimited Singapore slings, which was those were the days indeed. But no, that was fun. So I guess, have you been able to, in addition to conferences happening in Singapore, have you been able to do much travel to customers in other countries in the region up to now? Has that been pretty decent, or is that still rather tight as it is here in Hong Kong, let's say?
Sure. With regards to visiting customers in the region, you have more destinations now opening, flying from Singapore again as a hub to destinations such as Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam. Even pre-departure or some of the on-arrival COVID tests started to be dismissed by the research. So things start to be much more appealing.
A little bit jealous, to be honest. A little bit jealous. And one of the other interesting things that I watch from a distance as it relates to Singapore is the way that their space ecosystem is developing. And again, there's a certain level of comparative reference, we Hong Kongers and you Singaporeans, and how are our respective governments supporting these sort of frontier industries. But can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in the Singaporean space ecosystem in this city of 5.5, 6 million highly educated people? I guess it's got to be pretty dynamic as far as I can tell from my vantage point here.
Wow, I have to say, Singapore has an emerging space and technology ecosystem. This includes in academia. I can think of the Nanyang Technological University, NTU, the Satellite Research Center, SARC, National University of Singapore, NUS, with the Nanyang Polytechnic, NYP. And there is also a very vibrant space tech startup scenes with Alina Space, New Space, Space Change, and other industry groups carrying out a very wide range of space activities, from the designs and manufacture of satellites and real-estate components for the provision of satellite-based services such as Earth observation and the usage of SAR synthetic aperture radar imagery. So a very vibrant space ecosystem in Singapore.
Well, that's optimistic to hear, and that makes me even more excited about the upcoming conference. To be honest with you, it's gonna be cool to be on the ground there. So I guess digging into a more specific example of the, let's call it, the proactive nature of the Singaporean government in developing their space ecosystem. I read about a pretty interesting agreement between AWS and the Singaporean Office for Space Technology and Industry, I believe. And it seemed like a cloud agreement as relating to their space sector. Can you give us a bit more information on what's going on with is it Austin? Austin?
Yeah, sure. Austin, you know, the Office for Space and Technology and Industry in Singapore, the Singapore's National Space Office. And AWS will have signed a statement of strategic intent and cooperation back in November 2021. And this statement is the first of its kind for AWS in Asia. And it will help support Singapore's focus on space as a potential new industry for economical growth and technology development. Austin works very closely with research institute, industry, and fellow government agency, and they help build relevant space capabilities to support this growth in country.
So helping to support Singapore's focus on space as a potential new industry for economic growth and development. So how specifically is AWS helping them in terms of contributing to these activities?
So the statement between AWS and Austin defines specific areas of collaboration designed to foster the development of space technologies and support the creation of a vibrant, sustainable, and innovative space hub in Singapore. So AWS will support this effort in developing the space industry by providing resources to support businesses with AWS credits, educate, train talents, enable the development of innovative new products and services in the space industry. This is very much in line with Singapore's move towards an innovation-led economy to support national priorities in aviation, maritime, climate, economical, environment, and future generation, and also stimulate the young generation here to invest in career in science, technology, engineering, and STEM fields.
Well, those are a lot of good things, and definitely a lot of very big industries to be working with. I mean, when you say things like aviation and maritime and climate, I mean, these are huge in terms of the amount of optimization that you could imagine from digital and from cloud and different things. So are there some specific companies that you guys are currently working with in Singapore that are, let's say, that worth discussing, or that might be interesting examples of such collaboration?
Sure, I can just name a few. EO Factory, for instance, Singapore-based company creating a platform for delivering deep insights and intelligence as a service for Earth observations. We also work with Add Value Singapore with a fascinating LEO to Geo relay communication system called IDRS. Geo Insights, a joint venture between DSO, the National Laboratory, and ST Engineering Electronics. So a very vibrant, again, landscape for partnerships.
Well, and again, some big names, because what ST Engineering Electronics, that would be a subsidiary. I mean, the parent company is that's big business. Yeah, cool stuff. That's exciting. So I guess when thinking about the context in which we have known one another for almost a decade, I mean, primarily it's been your role in the GeoSatcom sector, and you've worn many hats around the GeoSatcom industry, and you're well experienced in conferences like communication in that context. So I guess, talking about your role at AWS and what you see from your GeoSatcom industry context, what's been going on with some of the geostationary satellite operators in terms of AWS? I mean, this is an area near and dear to my heart as well, and also certainly to APSCC. So I'm sure this is Yeah, all years now. This is interesting.
And they are very close to my heart indeed. So one of the company you're familiar with, Pacific, providing local satellite broadband internet connectivity, high quality, to improve the lives of people living in remote Southeast Asia area and Pacific regions. They will own in AWS by migrating their IT infrastructure and critical businesses applications to AWS. So with AWS Pacific can provide connectivity to more people more rapidly, to businesses, government, communities, allowing critical services like healthcare, education, and public information in rural and remote areas to be delivered online. Another one in Thailand, Thaicom, they signed with AWS a global cloud infrastructure deal a month ago to quickly and easily create, transform, and deliver their digital content by leveraging AWS global cloud infrastructure. So these are only a few examples, but the ambition is really to serve the Asia Pacific community with our breadth and depth of technologies that can enable the space sector to deeply innovate on solutions.
Makes sense, and a special shout out to our good friends over at Pacific and Thaicom. They've got a couple of pretty cool companies and some good people over there. So good, shout out to them. So I guess looking at the broader space sector and the things that AWS would be doing outside of just say limited to geo satcom, but broader space industry. How has that been in terms of covering that and in terms of working with broader space sector companies in the context of AWS?
Well, AWS is uniquely positioned to help accelerate innovation in the global aerospace and satellite industry by bringing cloud expertise. So we are really excited to help reimagine how organizations in Asia Pacific operate, explore, and further discover space. Companies have moved into the space business and are now launching more commercial and government satellites and human missions into orbit more than ever before. So from geospatial analysis to ground services, satellite manufacturing and operations, to the creation of the AWS Aerospace division, AWS gathers significant experience and expertise to support commercial and government customers in the aerospace business. And I'm very proud to be part of this journey.
That's really that's interesting. Just the kind of the breadth of applications there, where it's anything from geospatial to satellite manufacturing. I mean, I think cloud, I guess, is so ubiquitous and such a digitization is such a huge trend that really it can be applied to a lot of different areas. And so, I guess one of the topics that I just mentioned, cloud. Could you give us a couple more specific examples of, let's say, cloud products that you would be selling into either the space or the satcom industry? And how does that work?
That's a very interesting question, Blaine, because it's one of the most frequently asked questions when I interact with customers. So in AWS, we cultivate a leadership principles on our everyday, whether we discuss ideas for new projects or deciding the best approach to solving problems. AWS has over 200 products, and there is no one-size-fits-all solution. We have a leadership principle called customer obsession, and we always work backwards from customers' needs. This is Amazon's very peculiar process of discovering an invention.
Can you talk to me about the next level of what AWS is going to get us?
Satellite technology is rapidly improving, but so is cloud technology. And when you marry those two things together, it really is a powerful combination. So Maxar is a space technology company, and they build and operate their own satellite constellations of Earth imaging, and that could push data to users. So as an example, if there's a major storm somewhere, because they built those algorithms and processes on the cloud, they can do global weather predictions 58% faster. That's the difference between 25 minutes of warning and an hour, and that can make the difference between saving lives.
Absolutely. It always is about protecting the Earth, protecting our people in those situations.
Another company that we work with is Fireball International. They've developed a process where they fuse satellite data with ground-based sensor data in such a way that they can identify a new fire breakout within 3 minutes of ignition. It makes the difference between vectoring response crews in a matter of minutes while the fire's still small and not out of control.
I really have a huge appreciation for the fact that this technology, this doesn't happen without the people with the ideas, the ingenuity, the wherewithal to make all of it come together.
And welcome back to part 2 with my discussion with Laurent Tran of AWS. So, Laurent, a moment ago, we were talking about cloud and how very diverse this phrase is. I mean, AWS, as you mentioned, has 200 or more than 200 cloud related products. And so I'm wondering, within the context of cloud, what are some emerging technologies that AWS is starting to look into or already is looking into that we should start to, maybe expect to see in the coming years in your cloud services suite?
Sure. Well, every application will be infused with machine learning and some artificial intelligence. So most customers we work with are very interested in ML, spurred by the broad adoption of Amazon SageMaker, for instance. AWS technologies deliver AI-powered analytics like object detection for various industries, including the agriculture, maritime, and smart cities, which improve the understanding of our planet and its resource, and help governments and commercial organizations make key decisions towards sustainable practices. So key development ahead.
Yeah, and once again, I mean, as I referred to earlier in the conversation, these sound like really big industries and big opportunities, and indeed just really complicated problems to try to solve through digitization and I guess cloudification, if we can use such a word. So one of the things that you mentioned a little bit earlier, and I think it's a rather specific phrase in the context of AWS, is this idea of working backwards in the process that you do. And so can you give me a little bit more information about what that process would entail in the context of one of our good friends, the satellite operators, let's say?
Well, working backwards, in fact, Blaine, is how we stay customer obsessed, and it's pretty much applicable to any industry AWS work with. We work backwards from the moment that the product, service, or experience should look like for the end users in the customer's hands. The working backwards framework can be used for big or small inventions alike, for internal or external customers. In the case of satellite operator, we help them go beyond selling raw capacity bandwidth by adding value to their solutions.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, basically, like you would envision what would a customer use this service for, and you try to reverse engineer that. So just to take a very basic example, like you think there's a lot of let's say, fishermen and women off the coast of different places in Asia Pacific that might need satellite connectivity, and there's some cloud element of that at some point. And how might AWS contribute to bringing, let's say, I don't know, live, or if not live, but cached video files to people that are out at sea fishing, something like that? And you say, well, what do we need to do? I mean, is that basically what you would be doing? And if so, kind of what kind of framework would you be using there?
The starting point of the working backwards process is listen to customers. What are
the
end
so the
users?
Fishermen, as it were.
Exactly. Okay. Who are the end users, the customers of our customers? And then we try to define what are the problems or opportunities we can help solving. And then we invent. 90% of what we build is driven by what customers tells us. So then we refine, of course, how would we describe the end-to-end user experience? What is the most customer benefit? And finally, we test and iterate. This allows us to keep track and define, measure success for our customers.
And can you give me a specific example of that process in action with a customer other than the fishermen that I just mentioned?
Yeah, working backwards in the case of helping national priorities for agriculture, maritime, fisheries, or climate, for example, based on listening to our customers' needs to access their satellite data faster at lower cost, AWS developed Ground Station. So AWS Ground Station enables customers to downlink data and provide satellite commands across multiple regions quickly, easily, and cost effectively, without having to worry about building or managing their own ground station infrastructure. And they only pay the satellite time they use by the minute. So on this particular product, I would like to go a step further, by the way, to talk about virtualization of hubs.
Well, there's a certain, I think, 18-letter VC in Silicon Valley that once said software is eating the world. And as we've been hearing in the satellite industry for rather a long time, there's a lot of softwareification of the satellite segment and also apparently of the ground segment. So, I mean, is this related to, let's say, software eating the world, could we say?
Yeah, we are talking about software-based solutions. And today, the satellite industry, we are talking about software-defined satellite, software-defined radios, SDR. By empowering customers to move from hardware to software-defined solutions, AWS improves scalability, reduce new missions deployment time and cost, and facilitate technology upgrades to support improved satellite capabilities.
Now that makes a lot of sense. And just a very brief aside, a short congratulations and shout out to our good friends at ArabSat, who I believe a couple of days ago ordered their first software-defined satellite. So on the topic of software-defined satellites, good folks at ArabSat, nicely done. Congratulations. That's a big decision. So Laurent, can you give me a little bit more insight, I guess, on how does AWS help to support those improved satellite capabilities using this sort of softwareification, as it were?
Well, the space communication industry has been debating about digitalization and open standards for over a decade, which haven't succeeded so far. In contrast to other communication technologies such as 5G or the internet, the space communication is based on non-standardized proprietary technology, which prevents scalability, reduces flexibility, and locks customers into expensive hardware solutions.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so I guess what you're saying is that, the ground segment, which includes a lot of different kind of components, both hardware and software and antennas and basebands and what have you. And AWS is working towards a process of virtualizing and I guess by extension simplifying most of that process and most of those systems. Let's say, is that fair to say?
Well, Blaine, thinking about it, it takes an average of 6 months and hundreds of thousands of dollars to deploy the ground segment for new satellite access, besides the antenna systems. So typically, ground segment infrastructures have leveraged proprietary hardware system to collect information from the satellite to users. Furthermore, if customers want to grow or upgrade their satellite network, they have to repeat the lengthy and costly process to scale their network or build a whole new network.
Yeah, so indeed, it does sound like there's a fair bit of value there in virtualizing a lot of that. I mean, are there any customers in this, in the APAC region at the moment that are utilizing AWS Ground Station?
Yes, we are collaborating with customers in Asia who wants to mutually expand their ground station presence globally. Operators, by doing that, move latencies from minutes to seconds, and through the AWS backbone, we are able operators to go global in minutes. So customer can move from a hardware-based architecture to a software-defined solution based on AWS provided digitizers, AWS Outposts, SDR partners we have, and software-based solutions. So we're reaching that goal, allowing customers to innovate in their network planning, provisioning, saving hundreds of thousands of dollars in operations.
And across what orbits do you serve those using all of those things that you just described?
Yeah, the only orbit that AWS Ground Station serves today is LEO and MEO in X-band. And this is very important for our collaboration with startups in region, helping them focus on their core missions, avoiding multi-million heavy CapEx investment for ground infrastructure.
Yeah, no, and that certainly makes sense in an industry like space where we have all these startups coming into the market that have these really intensive R&D requirements, and they're occasionally bootstrapped. To be able to save a few $1 million or more on CapEx has got to be quite significant. But I mean, just to get back to one of the earlier points about this sort of increasing importance of cloud and startups and established companies putting more and more of their processes into the cloud. Is there any degree of kind of like fear of some of your customers and or indeed some of your competitors putting so much of their critical infrastructure on AWS, in terms of cloud? How does that work?
I would like to use a very simple example, Blaine, taking the example of vast majority of our media companies using AWS, Netflix, for instance, despite the fact that they compete very aggressively with Prime Videos on the Amazon side. They run everything on top of AWS and have for several years. Same with Disney, Warner, HBO, and Turner. They all run on AWS. So bottom line, what customers care about is they want the broadest selection of services so they can continue to innovate for their customers.
That makes a lot of sense. And so I guess then I would assume that if companies as big and with, cloud as being as critical to their business as say Netflix or other media companies, if they're using AWS, I mean, it must be highly secured, let's say. I mean, can you tell me a little bit about the sort of security element of this very, all-encompassing cloud?
Yeah, well, security will always be our top priority. So AWS have architected the most flexible and secure cloud computing environment available today. Our core infrastructure is built to satisfy the security requirement for military, global banks, and other high sensitivity organizations. And we use the same secure hardware and software to build and operate in each of our regions, so for all of our customers.
Well, that must make it, I guess, very simple and very kind of ubiquitous across different regions and different verticals and other different ways of cutting the market. So I guess in terms of, in practical, in a tangible real world example, as a customer, would I need to build my own firewalls and have my own security algorithms, or is this all pretty much seamless and outsourced, let's say?
So we have what we call a shared responsibility model where where AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud and customer is responsible for the security in the cloud.
AWS responsible for the security of the cloud, and then the customer of the security in the cloud. So I mean, where is that dividing line, let's say, between of and in? So where does that responsibility start and end for AWS in terms of that being of the cloud, let's say?
So AWS is responsible for protecting the infrastructure that runs all the customer services that we offer in the AWS cloud. And this infrastructure is composed of the hardware, software, networking, and facilities that run AWS cloud services. So we are responsible for that.
Makes sense, Laurent. So we have AWS being responsible for the security of the cloud, and indeed the customer being responsible for the security in the cloud. And I guess with our satellite and space sector, we have one other rather unique element of the cloud, which may be the space component of the cloud. So what does security look like in the context of AWS's cloud offering in space, let's say?
Well, we discussed earlier about virtualization of hubs, and I would like to leave this session maybe with a thought about quantum technology by mentioning a local company based out of Singapore called Spectral. They are bringing to the market quantum key distribution, QKD, to serve governments and enterprise in Southeast Asia. So exciting times ahead.
My God, what a note to end on: quantum key distribution in our quantum future. So really interesting stuff, Laurent. Thank you very much for your time and this insightful walk through AWS and the aerospace landscape in Asia Pacific. So definitely really interesting. A special thanks to AWS, to the good folks at APSCC for putting on the webinar, and a short reminder to look out for the second part of the special two-part series from AWS, which will be released in 2 weeks' time, and which will deep dive into several specific customer examples of the cloud application of the space industry, looking at things like broadcast and broadband and even Earth observation trends. So definitely going to be a bit more detailed information on what are some of AWS's solutions in these different fast expanding verticals. So Laurent, again, thank you very much for your time. It's been great, and very much looking forward to catching up in person in Singapore next month.
See you in Singapore.
Yep, see you then. Great.